You guys all set? Yep. Okay. I'd like to call this meeting in order. Thank you for joining us at our village committee meeting. Today's date, June 28th, 2017. Can we please take a roll call?
Sure. June 26th. Trustee McGreal? Here. Trustee Delzell?
Here.
Trustee Pierce?
Here.
Trustee Zelinski?
Here.
Trustee Juarez?
Here.
Trustee McLaughlin?
Here.
Mayor Ryan?
Here.
We have a quorum.
Great. Can you join me for a Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You know, I know on the agendas we had the first order of business was a closed session. I'd like to, Trustee Pierce, is that necessary to have that right now? I'd like to amend that and push that a little bit back in the meeting. Can we do that?
I'd like to do it before standing committee.
That's fine. Sure. Then we'll start with the officer's report. I'm going to push mine back further in the meeting as well. Clerk's report.
We have the presentation of the minutes of the June 5th, 2017 Village Board meeting and the presentation of the minutes of the June 12th, 2017 committee meeting. That is all, Mayor.
And it's committee, so we don't have an attorney this evening or an engineer. Public forum. Anyone would like to address this board? Sure. Go ahead, ma'am. Yes.
We need this thing here, but hi, I'm Sandy Trench. Live at 4633 West 128th Place. Welcome, everyone. I just had a couple things. Wanted to see what the update was on our street at 128th Place getting fixed, resurfaced, etc. I know Mike's been working very hard on this. And also, I have a situation with the renter, and I need to know the proper procedures because the cops have been out over 15 times, and now it's just getting where she is mentally ill, threatening people, wants to kill everyone, thinks there's terrorists all over, and it's causing problems with all of our children. Everyone, I mean, cops were out again last night. So I need to know what the steps are to get her out. Apparently, the person that owns the house, which is Mr. Carney, I sent him a text again yesterday, isn't doing anything and doesn't care. There's a full list of everything. Last night she was going to stab me with, she said a bat, but it was a stick.
Can I ask you, Sandy, what's her proximity to your house?
Next door,
Really?
4625.
Okay.
And they're renters. And she lives there with her one son. I think the other son is the one that is renting it. You know what I'm talking about?
I don't know.
No. But they've been called out months at a time. She's spitting people's faces. She calls them whores, bees, see you next Tuesday. Says we're prostituting all of our children in the neighborhood.
Understood.
So I have a list, and the whole block came out again yesterday, and nothing has been done, and she is still there.
Okay. Chief, go ahead.
Yeah. And I had the crew, and I know they told me to talk to Rock. I left a message for Rocco. I've been calling Linda, the health department, reporting probably 100 times.
Okay. Thanks, Chief. Okay. Also, Ms. Trench, I was actually at your house last week.
I heard.
Met your husband, very nice gentleman. And
Seriously?
I
call him my wife.
Oh, he was a nice guy, you know. And I totally, Sandy, after you came in, I'm sorry, you know, like, let's just say the last couple of months, you know, we had a little bit on our plates, but I did have a chance to go over and review your street. I spoke to Public Works and with our engineer. And really, you're in I understand your predicament. You're a feeder street to a major subdivision back there and stuff.
Right and
too.
left.
And we did all those streets a couple of years ago, and we didn't even do the feeder that came in. And again, budget usually dictates where you're going to go with that and so forth. So I did ask, and Mike, we are going to try and include that, right?
Yes, we have identified that street as well as a couple of the other remaining streets in that area to finish off that subdivision. So I've been working with finance. We're looking to hopefully put the request and go out to bid soon. Pending on what happens with the state budget right now, it may affect some of the MFT reimbursements, but we do have it identified and we're trying to get it done this year before.
That'd be great.
And the other,
When you added budget. So
That street's always been identified.
it's been identified, but in the longer plan,
We're looking at-
we're doing it to, when it was presented at the budget hearing with the previous board, it was in a future year, but based on what's happening at the state level with IDOT and asphalt prices, Mike has asked that it be put on this year, and when it was distributed in the budget, it was done, it was distributed to you that way as this year. But it wasn't done that way when it was talked about in the budget hearing to the last board.
Right. And just so the public understands, her street is 128th Place and Cicero, where the Baymont Hotel is at. This is a major feeder street with a street light that feeds like two subdivisions behind it. And while we were able to take care of those subdivisions, at least one of them over the last couple of years, the street's shot, and because it gets used so much.
I was going to say, you're not going to have any asphalt by the time you look at these pictures because the people are breaking their tires going in there. And plus, you turn that corner at the stop sign, they're doing 60 to catch the flipping light.
Right.
And I get that. And I know you guys are working hard, and money talks, and God knows where it's all at right now, but,
No. Have a little
so-
patience with us, but
I will.
we
I
have
confidence
identified, and that's why I wanted to go myself and look
Yeah,
at it too,
nope,
sure.
Got it. Main thing, I will let everyone, of course, I speak for my whole block,
Right.
let them know about what the agenda is at the next meeting. A lot of them will be here. And the main thing is working on our problem that we have with him. The only thing I want to say, so I know I did it.
And Chief Miller, like you said, he'll talk to you tonight about your neighbor as well.
Yes. Yeah. Because right now she's just totally harassing everyone that's out
I'm sorry to hear that.
there. Great. Thank you.
Would you sign in, please?
And certainly, we'll do what we can, Ms. Trench, to look out for your interest in this
Yeah,
thing
well,
yet too,
with the
so.
neighbors, something has to happen now. I said I want to press charges, or we're going to have to figure out what we have to do
Exactly.
because she's threatening to kill people.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Alan Schumacher, 14420 Mason in Orland Park. I wanted to talk about the 911 center.
Sure.
This has been going on for 2 years. I've been to a lot of the meetings. I've collected the information. I've read the state law. I know that the village feels that it has to do this. I want you to consider something that Trustee Pierce brought up, the meeting the other day. Is this something you have to do, and does it make financial sense? The state law says shall, but what happens if you don't? You could lose state funding. You're going to lose state funding regardless. Tonight on your agenda, you have outsourcing this to Oak Lawn. You're going to pay the money that you get from the state to Oak Lawn and more.
Yes.
I'm asking that this board consider the people that are working in that room right now, that work there 24/7, 365 days. They're there every day. They've been there for probably longer than most people on this board have worked for the Village of Alsip. It's their career. It's their life. And you owe them, I think, transparency and a fair accounting of how you make the decision that you make. If you close the 911 center, there's a certain amount of money you're going to save because you're not going to pay them salaries. You're going to lose the money from the state. You're going to lose the money from Caltron. You're going to have to pay somebody to run your lockup. You're going to have to pay somebody to run that window by the front door that's open all the time. You're going to have to pay someone to answer the phone when the clerk's office isn't closed. You sit here at these board meetings and you open up bids from contractors for paving streets and everything else. Why isn't this as open and transparent a process as that is? Why don't you have the finances to show people why it is you make the decision that you make? I'm asking on behalf of the people that work in there, one of whom I know extremely well.
Mm-hmm.
This is their life, this is their career, and it shouldn't be treated as something which is just foisted on you. Do you have a legal opinion that says you have to close that 911 center? Or is it just a financial decision? The law says you have to do it, and it says the consequences if you don't do it. The consequences say there's a penalty provision. There's no penalty provision in the law. Read it. Have your lawyer read it. Have your lawyer tell you what it actually means and what the decision is for you to make in terms of what you're going to lose and what you could gain by leaving it open or closing it. This has been going on for 2 years. The former police chief was basically just given the reins to run with it, and nothing was done, as Trustee Pierce pointed out. Why wasn't anything done? I was here watching it, and nothing was done. And now it's at a point where you have to do something. At a minimum, these people deserve honesty and openness and an explanation for why you're going to do to them what you're going to do. You're the managers of the village. You've taken the money from the people. You pay out the money from the people. You owe it to the people of the village of Alsip, including the employees of the village of Alsip, to explain to them why you make the decisions you make. That's what I'm asking tonight, is that this board give a fair accounting of the pluses and the minuses. All of the things that are going to happen if you close the 911 center, financially and otherwise, and all of the things that are going to happen if you transfer the 911 center to Oak Lawn or Southwest Central, or half of it to Orland Park and half of it to who knows where. It's a financial decision that I know your finance director has been asked to give dollar amounts for as long as I've been coming to these meetings. I've heard about packets being handed out numerous times to the board members. So the information is out there. The people whose lives are going to be affected by this deserve to know. You deserve to know why you make the decision you make, and what that decision is, and what effect that has on them, and their union has a right to know.
Sure.
They have a contract with the village, and I think it's a collective bargaining agreement that includes certain provisions that your attorney has probably spoken to you about. So what I'm asking is, be open. This is a new board, it's a new mayor. Tell people what you're doing and why you're doing it in fairness to them. They're sitting in that room and they don't know. It's not fair. Thank you.
No, well said, Mr. Schumacher. I tell you, one thing that the attorney recommended, and what we've done for the last 2 weeks, we've actually had the meetings out here in the boardroom to make it more transparent, where, there's numbers out here and there's numbers available, and we've actually spoken to those numbers during the meeting yet, too. And our goal, even this evening, we're going to have another presentation by the Oak Lawn Dispatch as well. I go to many meetings, and I tell you, I was at a South Suburban Mayors and Managers meeting about a week or so ago, and I had a mayor on either side of me trying to ask me to join their source and whatnot. And I can tell you, the previous board, I'm not going to speak for all of them, but I'll speak for myself. Sometimes you sit there, and the current employees are definitely a priority in my life yet, too, that you want to have, find a lifeline if there's still one out there. And in fact, we had a committee meeting last month, and not even last month. I've been here almost 6 weeks now, but call it, Tommy, about 4 weeks ago, Chief? Okay, and one of the things that was mentioned was we did collaborate on a couple of suburbs we thought we might still be able to get a hand in with, but we did speak with those suburbs at the same time, and they were not, we thought maybe they were unhappy with the current service, that the outsourcing that they went to. Maybe we can bring them in with us, and they weren't interested in breaking our contract. So we have been trying a couple of small options of towns that we felt might have been viable. That's what we were kind of really looking for, was a lifeline. We're not going to stop that. That's the whole reason we put these meetings on top of each other. The last 2 weeks, like as you said, we had Southwest Central, and then last week we had Orland Park. Tonight we got Oak Lawn. After we hear from at least 3, because you can go on all day, you can shop everywhere. It's not going to be that indifferent. But what I'd like to see then is ask ask the committee, I should say, the 911 committee, to actually tabulate that and actually draft a spreadsheet to see what would be the cost of us keeping this service, as opposed to trying to outsource it. And more importantly, we keep being reminded that the state is still going to qualify us, even if we had our own money, they may not let us keep it. So there's a couple things they have, but I agree with you. And the transparency is where we're at, and that's why I'm trying to do this in an open boardroom now then, too.
Well, and that's appreciated. It didn't happen for the last 2 years.
I know.
That you're committed to that now. You have over $500,000 sitting in the 911 fund that is going to go to the joint.
Even less. I think it's like 4, Tom, right?
Yeah,
Chief, I
400
apologize,
change.
Chief. Yeah.
May of 2016, it was $531,000 according to Chief Radz's memo that he sent to the Illinois State Police. So
It's gone down since then.
I
Because of the radios.
I thought the fund balance is about 409 right now.
Yeah, right around there, because we purchased the radios for the PD.
that's a perfect example of something that ought to be transparent, because it's not the board's money, it's the village.
Sure.
We
The people in the village ought to know where that money is being spent and why, and issues were raised about that fund in this room at a board meeting, and whether it was being spent on proper expenses, whether it was on 911 expenses, or was it being spent on general things. Look, when you don't talk about things, people that sit out there or that watch on the video have questions. And when you go into closed session all the time, people have questions and they think you're conspiring back there with some grand
Sure.
scheme. And it's not the way things ought to be done in a municipality with an elected board and with people's money. So I appreciate the offer to describe things now. Do a spreadsheet. I know the finance department has been asked about that by Trustee Delzal for over the year that I've been coming here. And maybe it was given. Sure wasn't given to the public. You can't give out people's salaries, I understand.
No, I get
There's
that.
confidential information. But you've got to be more open about it.
But the committee statement that Chief Stasinski put together for us recently, we can make that, certainly we can make that public.
Correct, and it is open at the public meeting. It is posted in the paper when the 911 meetings are, and the next one is going to be July 12th at 9 a.m. The one on June 8th was posted, whatever our requirements are to post them, so it is open meetings, anybody can attend.
Are those meetings, the 911 meetings, videotaped and put online?
Usually not, no.
It's just,
usually
it's a
don't.
committee meeting, and
Yeah.
it's still, I mean, I suppose we could. That was the first one I attended, and
There's 8 people over there. And it would be like if you were disbanding the police department and outsourcing it, or the finance department and outsourcing it, or whatever you want to say.
Sure.
These are people's lives. It's, in the end, it's a financial manager's decision. It's dollars and cents. But for these people, it's, the person who I know the best, in her situation, she's been there for almost 30 years. It's her life. And there's people in that room who are just as committed and just as dedicated to that job as she is. They have union reps, they have rights as people, they have rights as union members, and they have rights as employees of the Village of Alsip, and they ought to be honored. And it shouldn't take me to stand up here and beg you to do that. I appreciate that since you've come on now for the last month or so, and we have a new board, it seems to be a different situation. But you have to recognize that there are people who you're influencing and you're affecting, and you're going to affect their life, not just now, you're going to affect it for the rest of their lives. Because it affects pensions, it affects health insurance, it affects everything.
understood. And I agree with you. Actually posting it or recording it's not a big deal. We do it all the time, so. And we do have the meetings right here in this room and so forth then too. So we can certainly do that. At our last meeting, really, it was just a matter of putting together a new 911 committee, which Chief Stasinski is now going to chair with myself as members, and Chief Miller, and the Finance Department as well. So, you too. Thanks. Moving along, standing committees, Finance, Trustee McGlohorn.
I'll have the usual list of bills.
I thought it was, excuse me.
I thought he mentioned before. Did you want to do, Trustee Pierce, you wanted to do the closed session before standing committees, correct?
That's fine. That's fine. That's fine. Go ahead, Trustee Pierce.
Request that we enter a closed session to discuss the appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of specific employees of a public body or legal counsel for the public body, including hearing testimony on a complaint lodged against an employee of the public body or against legal counsel for the public body to determine its validity pursuant to 5 ILCS 120/2C1.
It's the first. Do we have a second?
Need a motion and a second.
Second. I'll second.
I'm sorry, who for? Trustee McGrill?
Oh, I'll make the motion.
Roll call number 1 to go to closed session. Trustee McGrill?
Yes?
Trustee Dalzell.
Yes.
Trustee Pierce.
Yes.
Trustee Zelinski.
Yes.
Trustee Juarez.
Yes.
Trustee McLaughlin.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Folks, we're going to, I'm not sure what we're going to discuss yet, but we're certainly trying to make it brief. I really appreciate your patience. We're going to go into executive session and return as quickly as we can. Thank you. Call this meeting back to order at 8:55. Before we move on with the standing committees, I'll get my report done here. Under the mayor's report, at our next meeting, July 10th, I'm going to make an appointment of Sergeant Kevin Mikos to the rank of lieutenant at that board meeting. Also, wanted to make mention of the board this evening as well. And for those with agendas in their hand, one thing we need to make clear is that I've had a discussion with the attorney, and Joe Kankar is with us this evening. And Joe, please, if you want to make an explanation on action items versus...
Yeah, no, I saw in the, when I received the committee meeting agenda, I saw a bunch of action items on there. I didn't really know what that meant, and then I was informed that people were actually intending on, like for the planning and zoning, people were actually intending on approving that, and approving ordinances. And what I did inform the mayor was that you couldn't take any action as Board of Trustees at a committee meeting and pass an ordinance or approve a zoning subdivision, so to approve a subdivision, that needs to happen at a regular or special board meeting where the notice to the public goes out and they expect the action to be taken, specifically because although you're sitting as a committee of a whole, there are individual committees and not all the trustees are a part of a committee of the specific special committees and so on and so forth, so you don't have the full 6 voting on a item. So while you can give advisory recommendations to the village board, you can't actually pass an ordinance at a committee meeting.
So in the future, we can actually add a special meeting on the back of a committee meeting?
That's correct. That's what I would advise. Yeah, just have a special meeting set up for the same time as the committee meeting, and then when that ended, the night you guys, everyone was inaugurated, we did that. We had the committee meeting, and then there was a special meeting afterwards for action items. So that's what I would recommend in the future.
Yeah, I wish we had been told that last week because we were concerned about the chief's salary, and we said that we would put it on as an action item after we got more information and had discussion. And we didn't want him to have to wait an extra 2 more weeks, even though everything would be retroactive.
Okay.
But no one told us that last week.
Well, I apologize. I don't know if I was...
And we've done it this way
think I
before
was-
when it's something important.
Oh, Mike, okay.
Okay, thank you. So, again, in the future, trustees, please, if you needed something like that done, as we've done a couple of times, we'll get through our regular committee meeting and then call for a special board meeting after which, if it's of importance that evening. A couple of quick items here, too, as well. I did get a notice today from Illinois Department of Transportation, just a reminder, an update, I should say, moving forward, regarding that project I discussed at 127th and Route 83 with regard to the bridge. Right now, the general scope of work for this improvement will consist of bridge replacement, turn lanes, pavement reconstruction, widening, resurfacing, sidewalks, and shared use paths. The project will also include all incidental and collateral work necessary to complete the project as shown in their plans. And Mr. Fair, did they send you plans on this area then too? Okay. So those will be available through him, through the Public Works as well, if anyone needs to speak with Public Works. I'll save this for my next report next week regarding the Tree City USA bulletin and the need for more trees to be planted in the area. There's a lot of folks that didn't want to have trees in their area, and it does promote some, it's got benefits to it. I apologize. As far as the appointments, we took care of, we discussed that already, then too, the appointment, I should say, for next week. So that's all I have for my report. Next, Finance, Trustee McLaughlin.
I'll have a list of bills and payroll.
And then Fire Committee, Trustee McLaughlin.
Okay, I don't know if you want to talk about this, Chief, in terms of the discussion on reevaluating the inspection
Right.
fees.
Do we want to bring Oak Lawn and let them do their thing first, so we're not, there's like 15 of them out there right now, or is this going to move quickly?
Chief, I wanted to real quick go through our agenda here, and this
Okay.
shouldn't take long, with just some reports, but then I'd circle back to them.
All right.
I did, and as a board, I'd like to, and I just asked Mr. Hopkins with our Economic Development Group if he would postpone his presentation until next meeting, only because of the time that we had used, and certainly we value everyone's time here at the same time. So,
All right.
Chief, well, that's going to take the place of where we had for the, I'm sorry, it's probably going to still stay in the same spot, but let's get through our agenda.
Sounds good. I'll go through my stuff. A couple things is a review, kind of overview what we talked about a couple weeks ago about reestablishing the fire inspection fees for annual inspections. I did hand out 4 different pieces of paper. One's the original and proposed fees. The second one is the current village ordinance for the building department's annual inspection fees. The third one is invoices that we collected before we had to refund them. And also was where we're at with our fire prevention guys on plan review. So back in 2014, I proposed fees for annual inspections. Our inspectors that go out that do annual inspections come back off duty. They're at a special rate. It's called a 7G rate. It's not an overtime rate. It's slightly lower than that. All of our inspectors are certified inspectors, so they go out between 4 and 5 hours at a time. We have over 1,500 between businesses and apartment buildings that get done every year. The apartment buildings are usually done in September, and also the building commissioner usually goes out, and in this case, Roger Early went out last year with our guys. So we looked at the fees, sat down with my fire prevention officers, and kind of talked about what is our real cost based off how long we're in buildings, what we do administratively, maintenance of the vehicles, and so on and so forth. I know there was an issue with some of the businesses they had with the fees. I know there were some issues with some of the apartment building owners and condo units with what the fees were. So we went back to the table and looked at a few things. I scratched off the residential, and I'll go back to that in a second. But we look at commercial and industrial. We're looking at taking out the over $200,000 at $350 for both, and just making it where the maximum fee is over 100,000 square foot will be $200, and that's it. One of the concerns that were out there before, and it's something we have to address logistically on our end, is I'll give you a good example. Johnson Machine has 6 different buildings. So let's see if each one of these buildings adds up to more, than 100,000 square feet. They're going to pay almost $1,200. All right. Where if you add up all their property all together, it's going to be whatever the maximum fee is, and that's probably a little bit more palatable than charging each one for each different building. So that's one thing we're looking at. I did have a conversation with Roger Early. The building department sends out invoices every year for all the multifamily buildings, between apartment buildings, condo buildings, and some of the townhomes that are out there. I'm not sure what they take in, how many of the invoices are actually paid. I don't have that part of that record. But when we did it for our businesses, which is the third page down, it showed out how many places were invoiced and how much payment we received. So we keep track of that on the fire department end to make sure whatever we bill out, we collect at the same time. So it was a substantial amount. The second article is the annual inspection fees for the building department, and this was passed back in 1980 when the fire inspector, the building inspector, electrical, plumbing, health, I think that's it. They all went out at the same time. So they only did the apartments together at the same time. After that, it was the building inspector and the fire inspector that did the rest of them. Over the last 12, 15 years, whatever it is, it's just the fire inspector that goes out for the businesses. And our guy's been catching a lot of businesses that don't have current business license. We found things that are against building codes, and we bring it up to the building department at the same time. But their fees for the multifamilies have not been changed since 1980, and that's why we looked at increasing our fees. When I spoke to Roger Early the other day, one of the things we talked about is whatever we make our fees for the apartments, so we're not doing duplicate billing, is we just make one bill, and to show that, what the money brings in. So X amount would go to the fire department and X amount would go to the building department. It's all paper. It all goes to the same place. It all goes to the general fund. But it would show how much we're actually bringing in for recouping our costs for the annual inspections for both the building departments and the fire departments. Speaking with Roger, and I'll let him speak to this also, he's also talking about going out with the business, during the business inspections also. So again, trying to catch some of the stuff on the building department side instead of just the fire department. So, yeah. So we've had that conversation earlier this week. So we're getting towards the end of our last year's annual inspections. Before we start this year's, kind of want to see where we want to go with this. I also want to have a meeting with the Alsip Industrial Committee as well as the Chamber of Commerce members to see any concerns, kind of have it like an open forum meeting, see what their concerns are there, to see where we can go with this. Obviously, with everybody's financial restraints and everything else that's out there, we kind of recoup some of our costs for doing business. This is above and beyond what we do as the fire service. Everybody thinks they pay taxes for everything in the fire service, and it's there just to provide 911, but we do a lot of services above and beyond that. Our fire prevention officers go out and they do fire pump tests and they do fire alarm tests. We've been doing that for several years as a separate charge on top of that. So the fees themselves are not new. In 2014, it's always been in an ordinance that we're supposed to build businesses, but we never have. So, it's not like something that's new. It's not something that's been in the ordinance. For whatever reason, it was never done. I can't answer why, because that's not my department for that as well.
So do you want to run this past the Chamber and the Industrial Association?
I want to have an
before we
open
approve
meeting with
anything?
them, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So once you do that, then if you can write up.
Yeah, I just want you to look at what the proposal is right now for what the fee structure we're looking at. We're still gathering information from other towns that charge and other districts that charge and what their prices are.
Okay.
So in the next couple of weeks, we'll have another meeting, and then I'll set up a meeting with Chamber and Industrial Committee or Commission to get them sit down with them also and go over it. So I just want to let you know what we've built so far that before we had a refund in, I think, 2014. And like I said, we had no problem with most of the businesses paying, just a few that we had issues with.
Okay.
Any other questions on that one? All right, the next is a fire alarm ordinance. We've had several revisions to this over the last couple of years, and it's actually kind of bit us a little bit during housing court when we have false alarms. We try to have it where people maintain their alarms, but it keeps going off for a problem or maintenance. We issue a citation to go to housing court to make sure they fix the problem for finally. The police department's had something like this and works for years also, where they also bill for so many false alarms. So we're kind of looking at changing some of the language. So again, it makes it streamlines it a little bit more, and it doesn't turn around and bite us in housing court where we get our fees thrown out or our time thrown out. So on the first page, we're adding a section that says each false alarm in excess of 6 in any 365-day period. So within a year, if they have more than 6, and then we start issuing citations and bringing them to housing court to ensure that they have repaired their alarms the way they need to.
Now, I do have one question. In terms of broken sprinkler heads.
Yes.
That causes an alarm to go off. Does
Yes.
that fall under the false alarm category?
No, it does not.
Okay.
No, it doesn't. Just the fire alarm itself, not protective systems such as sprinkler heads. And give you a good example, because you work there at Griffith Labs, they've hit a sprinkler head a couple times with the forklift. That happens.
And that's why I have to ask, because I know it happens. The fire alarm goes off, we evacuate the building and have to wait for the all clear.
Right.
But-
I'll give you a good example of why this came out. Actually, two places. One is Woodland Courts, 11901 and 11921 Millard. Their alarm system was notorious going off at 11, 1, 2 o'clock in the morning, and it was because it wasn't repaired properly. It had to do with the flow valve in the sprinkler was not set right. They had a company come out, fix it. Supposedly they fixed it. 2 days later, we're back there again. Or people smoking in the hallway set off the smoke detectors. so on and so forth. So that was one that was brought to court. Most recently was the new Taco Bell when they brought it in town. Two different things with them is one, they had a light switch that was connected to one of their exhaust fans in the back, and at nighttime they turn off the back lights. Well, it also turn off the exhaust fan, so when customers come in, now they're making tacos, now the steam goes off and it sets off the fire alarm because there's no exhaust system. The second part of that is they have a cleaning process when they clean the griddle, and they had smoke detectors that were inside Taco Bell. Smoke would get to them, set it off, and there we go again. 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning, they're setting it off as well. So since then, they've changed their smoke detectors to heat detectors, so that alleviated one problem. And after the third or fourth time with the exhaust system, their exhaust fan is hot wired all the time, so it's on. So we alleviated both of those problems. So again, this would be for that as well. So again, it's just changing the language to take out the loopholes that we lost in housing court and make it a little bit more clear on the ordinance itself. So if that makes any sense. On the fourth page, we're just deleting that whole section, and that's the one that's caught us before. And we're just changing some of the language in the other 2 pages. It makes it a little bit easier when we have to go to housing court, when we issue citations as well. Doesn't happen a whole lot. Happens infrequently, if you will. But again, it turns into kind of a nuisance after a period of time, especially if they're not getting the proper maintenance done on it. Questions at all? And then I'll bring it up at the next board meeting for approval of the ordinance also with the language that's proposed in here. That's okay. Good. All right. Next one is part-time secretary. Just kind of review with that. I did speak and I did meet with Cassie Franson. I did have a list of my fire inspectors that do administrative work and why it would be more beneficial to hire a part-time secretary to take care of that. My fire inspectors at the 7G rate make $37.50 an hour. All right, they're supposed to be for fire inspections, not doing administrative work. So 2 things are happening is A, I'm losing time going out doing annual inspections, and B, they're doing administrative work, costing a village a lot more money. The second part of this was the Caltron system, to have an accountability system of being able to recoup what we have going out with billing with the Caltron, as well as what we have coming in to maintain it, which is an issue we've had for the last 7 or 8 years, and that's why we're about $160,000 owed to us in the Caltron fees. So this part-time secretary would be responsible for all administrative work and fire prevention, and also maintaining the Caltron accountability, if you will, for the account. I'm looking for between 15 and 20 hours a week, depending on the time of the year and how busy it is. Speaking with Cassie Franson, because of the work that this person would be doing and the information that they'd be obtaining, we're looking at a confidential, and it wouldn't be it'd be a non-union employee, because again, they have information, the personal information of businesses and some of my inspectors at the same time. So they'd be at the $14 rate an hour, and this is actually budgeted for this year's budget.
Nothing's budgeted yet.
Well, I mean, it's proposed in this year's budget. How's that? Over the last 2 years, I've had to shift money at the end of the fiscal year to cover my 7G rate to cover this also. Questions at all?
I understand the justification. I just personally, at this point in time, until we actually sit down and have the budget hearings, I am against adding any positions until we actually review the budget. I don't know what anybody else feels about that. But
Oh, I understand. I'm trying to save money because I'm not paying $37.50. I'm only paying $14 an hour for a person part-time.
no, well, I mean, we have a budget. Our first budget hearing is on Wednesday.
Yep, I'll be here for that one.
But I feel it's important that we look at the
Absolutely.
The whole
So, but I did give you all the information that what Cassie Franson drew up for all the information on what the responsibilities are and what the requirements would be. And again, if this does go forward, we advertise it in house first in town. That'd be perfect for somebody in town for a part-time job. Questions at all?
Thank you,
Beautiful.
Chief.
Thank you.
Okay. Next, Police Committee, Trustee McGrail.
Discussion of the police chief salary. We had mentioned last week we were going to put that on for an action item this week to resolve that, because we wanted to make sure that we can properly compensate our police chief, and we had no information on how that number was on the ordinance. So tonight in closed session, we have a better understanding of where that number came from and was able to get salary history and comps. But unfortunately, and I apologize to Chief Miller, we've just been told we can't act on it tonight, which I don't really understand, because we should have been told to put a special meeting after, or we've voted on action items on the committee nights when we've had to before, and we did mention that. So I apologize, because we're not meeting again for 2 weeks unless something else comes up. But we will take care of that, and that will be retroactive. So I apologize on behalf of the whole board.
Thank you. Next, Public Works, Trustee Juarez.
I have a presentation of a request from Steve Carco for a refund of $27 for one vehicle sticker purchase at full price, but he's a senior citizen and should have been charged $5. And number 2, presentation of request from Glenn Pappas for a refund of $32 for vehicle sticker purchase for a vehicle he no longer owns. That's it.
Thanks. Building Committee, Trustee Zelinski.
We have a list of bills, timesheets, presentation of the request for a block party of the residents of 122nd and Harding on Saturday, September 9th. And I'm assuming this is supposed to mean from 12 noon till 12 midnight. Also,
1 minute.
presentation of the request for a block party for the residents at 3600 Bent Drive on Saturday, August 5th from 11 a.m. to 11 p.m. with a DJ until 10 p.m. only. Also a presentation of the request for a block party for the residents on 1800 South Carolyn Lane on Saturday, August 26th from 9 a.m. till 11 p.m. with a DJ and a band until 10 p.m. only. And a presentation of the request for a block party of the residents of 1500 South Colmar on Saturday, July 29th from 12 noon till 10 p.m. That's all.
Thank you. Water and Sewer, Trustee Dalzell.
We're presenting a list of bills and the employee time records. That's all I have.
License Committee, Trustee Juarez.
No report.
You'll have a list of licenses.
I will have a list of licenses.
Economic Development, Trustee Pierce.
We're going to move these 2 items to the next meeting. There would have been an update on the EDCA sale from Roger. And also, we're looking for board direction. We just discussed a couple weeks ago about some input on facade designs and things on Pulaski. Architect fees are TIF-eligible expenses, so Roger and Mary put together a presentation for tonight that we'll see next week.
Thank you. Mary, I thank you for your patience on that as well. I spoke to Mr. Hopkins, and we look forward to that next week, then, or next meeting, I should say, on the 10th. Planning and Zoning, Trustee Zelinski.
Presentation of the minutes of the June 14th, 2017 Planning and Zoning meeting. And the Planning and Zoning Commission met on Wednesday, June 14th, and passed the following hearings. Case number 2017-6-R-100 for subdivision at 11819 South Lamont, passed 5-0. B, case number 2017-5-S-200 for rezoning from I-3 to I-3 special use for property at 3350 West 131st Street for storage of heavy equipment and trailers, passed 5-0. And C, case number 2017-5-S-100 for rezoning from I-2 to I-2 special use for property at 11633 South Mayfield for transportation logistics, passed 5-0. Number 3, the action item, I'm probably not going to read because we're not doing it.
But we can still give a consensus on that tonight, can't we? Because I believe the property owners need,
Yeah, with this item, I heard that they've got a contractor coming in on July 1. Obviously, you can't approve it tonight, but if you want to give consensus that you're all going to agree to it, you can kind of give the guy a go-ahead to get the contractor out there.
This was on trustee, it was a fence variance, I believe, right?
Yes.
Okay. And we can draft an ordinance for approval on the 10th? So would we have a consensus, trustees, to allow the fence variance?
Is that the one where it's building on his neighbor's property?
Yeah, 1 foot.
And that's doable, there's no repercussions for the village to,
No, I just received the packet, so I'm going to review it, obviously, but no.
okay. Thank you.
So should I read it? And
Sure.
Okay. Number 3, the action item, request for approval to accept the Planning and Zoning Committee's recommendation to grant the request for re-subdivision and issue building permits to replace the existing fence for 11819 South Lamont, and that's all I have today.
So is everyone, we can get a consensus on that, then?
I'm okay with it.
Yes.
Yes.
Good. Everyone? Very good, thank you. Special committee reports, village properties, trustee McLaurin.
No report at this time.
Okay. Insurance committee, trustee McGrail.
No report.
Ordinance and legislation, trustee Pierce.
We won't be taking action on this tonight, but at the July 10th meeting, we'll have a request for an approval of an ordinance amending Section 2-59, selection and removal of appointed officers, Division 2, Mayor of Chapter 2, Administration of the Municipal Code for the Village of Alsip. And we'll also act on the police chief's salary, presentation of an ordinance establishing the salary for the police chief, Village of Alsip.
Trustee Pierce, if I may, would you be amicable to have that ordinance amendment, have a ordinance and legislation meeting for the subcommittee so that could be discussed rather than just...
Sure. I'll set a meeting prior to July 10th meeting. I'll set it early, 6 p.m., 5:30.
6:30 would be great, I think.
Okay, I think we're
at a committee meeting now. Can't we
Just-
talk about it now?
Yeah, we could talk about it right now.
Yeah, I'm just not sure of the rationale for it, and I know that it's in ordinance form, but I don't know who's been discussed with and the reasoning for this.
I put this on there. This was an ordinance that was enacted actually by yourself and John Ryan and the previous board in 2012, basically to give better consent and ratification powers to the trustees in appointing officers. Mayor Kitching changed with the board change in 2013, changed it back. I believe in your rationale and Trustee Ryan's and Trustee McGreal's rationale from 2012 that this consent should reside more with the trustees. So I'm asking that be reconsidered.
But the changes from the number of opportunities, or okay.
Yep. It's written exactly how it was presented in 2012 and ratified.
I apologize, when I read it, I took it a different direction.
It's identical.
Okay.
And also, what I noticed, Trustee Dalzell, in reading it, when it was changed back, it says selection and removal of appointed officers, and it doesn't talk about selection at all, it just talks about removal. So it needed to be cleaned up and clarified anyway.
Well, if we can maybe forward this in between time and have the village attorney review it to make sure that all the i's are dotted and t's are crossed for that aspect of it, then.
I spoke to Trustee Pierce. I told
Okay.
him
All right.
I
Appreciate it. Thank
contact
you.
him and we'll talk about it.
Okay, moving along. IT, Trustee Dalzell.
No report, but I will be trying to schedule a meeting. I'd like to get Brian Massari in and talk about some of our village software, the microfilming project, digitizing our records, and also with the finance director, the finance software. It appears that it's, I know for 6 years I've been requesting revenue reports along with the expense reports, and for 6 years we've yet to receive one. And this is both from the old system and the upgraded system. So I'd like to see if maybe there's something out there that'll actually give us some information that we can work with and get some knowledge to perform some informed decisions. That's all I have, sir.
Great.
So you're going to schedule just the IT committee, or?
Oh, well, the IT on that side of it, and it'll certainly fall in line with the finance as far as budgeting goes, because if we do go a different direction, there'll be certainly fees associated with that.
Mm-hmm.
Trustee Giselle, did the finance director bring up anything about the T1 and the PRI lines for the village at all to you?
No.
That was supposed to be on tonight's agenda, too. Our contract.
That call one?
What's that? That's
Is
our
that the
call
call?
one.
We got notice of
Yeah.
one thing from last week.
Right.
And he was supposed to make sure that was brought up tonight, and apparently not. That's the reason I was here. I was told to be here tonight.
Okay.
Our contracts are currently expiring on our inbound PRI and our point-to-point T1s. Unfortunately, like everything else, the costs of these lines are going up, and I've got Baltic Networks coming out at the end of the week to do a feasibility study for microwave. But looking at how we're configured currently, it looks like it's going to be a pretty lengthy and involved process to get us there. But in the meantime, our existing contracts are expiring. They're actually expired, and we need to move, at least renew contracts before the price of these things go to $2,000 a month. The PRI has gone up $30 a month since the last 3-year contract that we signed. It was $300 a month. It's gone up to $330 a month for the PRI. For those of you who are not familiar with the PRI, when you dial 385-6902, that's the line that all our village phone calls come in and go out on. There's 2 additional circuits that we have that connect the firehouses to the village hall. Those are a point-to-point T1 circuit. Those are where our costs have gone up pretty significantly. They've gone from $280 to $435 a month, and that's based on a 3-year contract. If we go on a 1-year contract month to month, it'll be about $535 a month, but there's a $2,000 connection fee that we need to make to get onto the a new vendor. If we stay with the existing vendor, the cost goes to about $800 per month per line, reoccurring. So I don't know how we need to proceed with this, but we do need to move forward and try and figure something out here. Do we put this on the agenda for next week for approval, or do we have to have an IT committee meeting and discuss this further?
Well, it'd be my suggestion that we put it on for approval.
Yes.
In the interim, though, lay out all the costs and the options that we have for it,
Right.
as well as, rather than a 3-year contract, maybe my suggestion is find out if we have an exit strategy, so that should we be able to do a microwave link, that we'd be able to get out of it without...
Exactly. And the problem that we're running into is partly it's the phone system that we have. It's not an IP-based phone system, so we're still working with 20-year-old technology. So when we're playing with 20-year-old technology inside, we're also dealing with that 20, 25-year-old technology on the outside. AT&T and all the phone service providers, they want out of this business. It's costly to upkeep and maintain. They want to get out of it. They want to get you onto MPLS circuits, which is it's basically a wide area IP network. It's cheaper for them to maintain, and it's less costly for us if we were to go that route down the road. But there's a lot of things in play here, and we definitely did make some movement forward.
And the state legislators already let the phone companies off the hook, AT&T especially.
Mm-hmm. So,
Chief, thank you. And it would just be my recommendation, when you want to post things like that, Certainly, rather than going through finance, I would regularly recommend the
I
chair.
was originally dealing with because it was a finance issue, and
Right.
you
Well,
know,
so he's not going to
gone
understand
and,
the other. Right.
you know, so in the future, I will definitely involve Trustee DeZell about
exactly. Go to the chair for that.
it. Yep,
Thank
absolutely.
you. Okay, and we'll get that going as soon as we can. Thanks, Chief.
I'll get all the information and email it to all of you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chief.
Boat launch, Trustee Juarez.
No report.
Human Resources, Trustee McGrail.
Hi, I just wanted to open a discussion on the Human Resources Manager and her department and the organizational structure of the village. We've had this conversation, the old board in the past, about who the HR manager should report to, because sometimes that doesn't allow her to do her job. So I've been approached by some of the newly elected trustees that were asking me about that too. So I just wanted to open it up to see what everybody's feelings are on that. I think that she shouldn't be reporting to the finance director. I think she should be reporting to the board as a whole, because if there is a problem like we've experienced in the past with a certain person or persons, then she can't do her job. So that way she would have the committee and the whole board of the whole to report to. I think that would allow her to do her job more efficiently and effectively, but that's just my opinion, and I'd like to know how the board feels.
I absolutely agree.
Mayor?
I don't think that you should. Department heads, none of the department heads report to this board. We don't manage the department heads. We don't manage the people. We manage ordinances, resolutions, and finances. We're not
Well,
bosses.
she can report
She can report to the mayor then.
to the committee.
That's fine, but it shouldn't be us.
But the problem was, there was a problem with the mayor that she had to deal with last time, and a problem with the finance director. So how do you do that? How do you do your job then? So I don't know if it should be the committee and the mayor, or,
I think for clarification, you're not speaking of me.
what does that mean?
You said a problem with the mayor.
No, I am not talking about Mayor Ryan. Thank you for the clarification. Not you, in the past.
All right.
Thank you for making me clarify that. But I'm just saying, I'm trying to let her do her job.
Sure. That
So,
would,
I don't know, I just don't think she should be under finance. Christine, what do you think?
I mean, definitely, I don't think she should report to the board. I mean, we need to stick with the chain of command, and all department heads report to the mayor. So if we're going to make a change, that would be the direction I would go. However, I mean, in past experience, I mean, I have had the HR report to me as head of finance, so I don't see an issue with that type of reporting structure, provided there is always a chain of command, and anytime that there's an issue with your immediate supervisor, then you follow the rules and you go to the next person up.
That couldn't happen here for her before, but thank you.
Well, I agree with you. I agree that she should not report to just the finance director. With being with mayor, having the problem that we had with the old mayor and her, that also falls into, her not doing her job fully. So I would think in order for her to fully do her job, I think that she should, if not to the board, then to some other outlet somewhere, but not to only the finance director.
please bear in mind, the board does not manage the day-to-day operations of this.
Well, that's fine, I'm just trying to find a way, that's why I'm asking for everyone's opinion. The way that we have it is not working.
Nothing's come across my desk to say otherwise.
Well, maybe we should talk to...
Or HR hasn't spoke to me about it as well.
We've had this conversation with the old board many times, and some people feel she should be under finance, and some people don't.
Okay.
Don't all the other head of departments report to HR?
No.
They report
Department
to the
heads
mayor.
report to me.
To the mayor.
Only to you?
All of us report to the mayor.
Then she should.
Then she should.
And the same thing, if any of us have a problem with the mayor, we have no outlet either. There's nothing
Well-
built in place for that, whether it's human resources, finance, myself, police, anybody.
You all have committees, you could at
Oh,
least
absolutely.
go to your committee, it's something, not much,
Absolutely.
but something.
No, absolutely.
She has a committee too.
Anything
Do
else?
you want to change that? Would we be interested in changing that, taking it out from under finance, because she's a department head, and putting her under the mayor like all the other department heads? I think that would be my suggestion.
Actually, what I'll do before I even make an opinion about this, because this really has not come across my desk at all, and whether there was a personality conflict with the previous administration, it is what it is. That changed 6 weeks ago. So what I'm going to say is I'm not going to have an opinion on this, Mayor, this evening. I will meet with the HR manager and get her thoughts on things before I do it. And she's not available this evening, so I will speak to her this week.
That's
and
fine.
Take care of that. Yeah.
That's fine. I just think it should be more consistent
Well, you
and
know
allow
what?
people to do their jobs.
How about
I
when we
think
meet
that-
again on July 10th? We'll speak about this again, okay?
Sure.
You could still have a human resources meeting before that and still have it on the agenda.
Yes, I
Sure.
can do that.
Sure.
I will do that. Thank you.
Sure. Traffic safety, Trustee Dalzell. I'm sorry, health and pollution, Trustee Pierce. I
No
apologize. Trustee Dalzell, traffic safety?
We had a notification about investigating no parking in the south side of 118th Street from Austin area, and so we'll review that. I want to talk to the chief, find out about how many calls for service we've had and what kind of issues there are before we start jumping through hoops to fix something that may be not a problem.
I know we addressed that not too long ago when we did the parking on one side of the street because they were parked on both. You couldn't even get down there. But I just heard the same thing, Chief. I spoke to one of the businesses back there, and they're still experiencing trouble getting through there.
And I did drive that area today, and I mean there were cars lined up totally on the south side of the
Yes.
street. However, there's also a separate issue in that, I mean, are all of the businesses that are over there, are they compliant in terms of their zoning and what their business licenses are for? Because the number of parking spaces actually at the businesses, because all that parking seems to be on the north side of the street, and you pull in off of 118th Street. If we allowed them to operate their businesses and granted them licenses without enforcing the proper parking at that time, that's kind of on us.
So, Chief, we can do a study on that and get back to the board in a couple weeks with that? Okay.
That's all I have, sir.
Presentations, petitions, and communications, anyone?
Madam Clerk, did you get that email that I sent you the last night?
Yes, I did, and I printed it, and we are going to post it out on the community board out in
Okay.
the hallway, and we will also try to tape it to the glass. Trustee Pierce sent an article, if you can explain in more detail.
So I don't know if everyone's aware, but the majority of the village of Alsip, children that live in this town are eligible for free or reduced lunches at schools. It's become such a high number that all of the school districts have just opened it up to all the children. So every morning during school, the children get free breakfast and they get free lunch. The concern of the school districts was always, okay, what happens in the summertime? So with the partnering with the federal government, Lane School right here, starting July 10th through August 10th, will open the doors for breakfast and lunch for any child or young adult under 18. Doesn't matter if you're living or you go to Lane or live in 126. Any child. They're not checking any IDs. Any child under 18 can come and eat.
Very good.
Very nice.
It's excellent.
So that could drastically cut down on my food budget.
I want to real quick circle back to Ms. Trench. I tell you that, Sandy, that really bothered me this evening that you're having that much trouble with your neighbor. I know you spoke with the police chief. Chief,
Yeah, I actually looked down at Ms. Miller, said he checked and doesn't have any complaints, but I already have three that were just done this month right now. But they're
okay. Chief, is it necessary, like order protection or anything like that too? Or, I mean, I don't want to get in front of you. It just sounds very volatile, that's all I'm getting at, so.
Once I'm stabbed, I can get one.
No.
Crime-free housing ordinance. There's been that many complaints.
I'd like to know, what did that renter have to, what class did he have to go through?
They have to go through a crime-free housing class to look into whether or not he actually licensed or not. So it's the landlord, not the renter.
Right, the landlord, and it's, what kind is it?
Crime-free housing.
Crime-free.
Thank you. Thanks, Chief, for obviously trying to help this out. Any unfinished business? I apologize, Chief, for you're the group from Oak Lawn. We'd like to hear about our 911 dispatch. Could you bring those folks in, please? Thank you.
You got my phone. You're my
Sandy?
Good night. This is the first Thursday of June, maybe the other 10 of May.
I haven't been able to.
There you go. Thanks, Joe. Who's number 3?
Getting like a 5-minute recess.
So this is not.
That's it. From now on, you are not Christine McQuall. You are Buttercup.
No, Jerry Lynn's Buttercup.
Nope, you're Buttercup.
That's what's calling. It's Jerry Lynn.
I'm gonna
Does she not know it's Monday?
watch this.
Chris,
Watch this.
does she not know it's Monday?
Well, yes, she does, but it's also 9:30, so.
Already?
Yes.
Nice.
That's wonderful.
I could sing that. It's close.
How are you? Hey, Rick.
So where are you flying out to?
San Francisco.
How long?
I'm at the bank on Saturday. I just. Really, Buttercup?
Okay.
It was Karen.
Good evening. I really appreciate your folks' patience. I know it was a long evening, and I apologize. We tried to get through our own business as quickly as we could. Certainly, your business is very important to us as well, and it's obviously a hot topic. I know we had met last year or so, and we have a new board at this time. We've got 4 new trustees, and they need to be brought up to speed on your service with through Oak Lawn Dispatch, and we can make more of an informed opinion coming up because we are trying to expedite this as quickly as we can then too. So please, as you wish.
Well, good evening, everyone. I hope this is on. My name is Dinah Tuzignat, and I'm the Director of Oak Lawn Regional Communications. With me tonight, I brought with my George Bissett. He's our technology team leader, and I'll give you some of his background in a bit. I also brought with me tonight a couple of our different chiefs from each of our different departments. We have Oak Lawn represented by Assistant Chief Scott Bowman from the fire side. From the police side of the agency, we have our Division Chief, Randy Palmer. Turn around, sorry guys. We have Bridgeview represented here by our Acting Fire Chief, Mike Daly. Evergreen Park Fire Department Chief Kleinhaus is here. We have Burbank Police Department represented by Division Chief Brian Bobenik. I have Evergreen Park Police Department represented by Deputy Chief Denny O'Dowd. I have our Oak Lawn Finance Director, Brian Hannigan, with us tonight. I also brought with me one of my Oak Lawn Regional Communications management team level, our operations manager, which is Craig Kowalski. So I'll tell you a little bit about myself. My name is Diana Tuzignat, and I started my career as a dispatcher. I started 16 years ago, and I always, figured dispatch was something that I wanted to get into. So I didn't become a police officer I didn't become a dispatcher to become a police officer, and I didn't become a dispatcher to step into the fire world either. I was promoted. I've worked for a few different departments, large single agencies, a lot of consolidated centers from up north. I started back about 16 years ago, and in 2005, I was promoted to a management level, and I've remained in that capacity since. I have a degree in business administration. I hold every certification in our industry. I'm a registered public leader from from APCO International, pardon me. I also have another certification, which is our ENP It's an emergency numbers professional, and that's through the NINA organization. And I'm also a communications center. I went through their center management program, and that was also through NINA. Part of the agencies that I've worked with, I've done a lot of different things throughout the different organizations that we've dealt with, different CALEA accreditations, Project 33 certifications. I also am active on 3 different committees on the national level through APCO, and those committees primarily focus on training and call standards. So my department, my whole agency, we have different standard operating procedures that we follow. We have a training curriculum that is based on national call standards. And I'm also a vice chair on the Occupational Process Analysis Committee through APCO. And then anybody who's in our industry that gets a Project 33 certification and training, I do those reviews and have agency certifications as well. Rich Bissett, he is my technology team leader. He works for all the different departments. He's been with the Village of Oaklawn since 2004. He began his public safety career as a dispatcher in 2002, and then he continued his education in information technology, and then within a few years he had the opportunity to blend the 2 careers together, and he's here with us at Oaklawn Regional Communications. He is the lead technical staff member for our 911 center, and he represents all 7 municipalities. So anything that involves their CAD systems or their, the vehicle, I'm lost for words now, mobile systems, he's the one that takes care of that. Along with his IT responsibilities, he's a technical project manager. He does all our database, and he's a reporting specialist. He's a GIS coordinator, network administrator. He also holds several technical certifications, and he is also an EMP, and he's been an emergency numbers professional since 2012. The other really cool thing about Rich is he's really good at what he does, and in 2015 he was awarded an Envision Award at the SunGuard Public Users Group, and that was a national conference. So he received national recognition for innovative emergency technical software. All right, and we'll kind of, here, let me, this is too light. So I know that was, I just wanted to give you some of our background since we've never met before, and I wanted to make sure that everyone understood that we're, in our world here, it's very different that when you're dealing with just police or just firemen, and you're dealing with a 911 center, we have to have a little bit of all. So I wanted to make sure that everyone understood that our department is run as a 911 center, and we work closely with all the different agencies. We also have my dispatchers, which we're run by Oaklawn Regional Communications, and we're housed at the Village of Oaklawn. NORCOM, and can you flip this? I think we're behind one. There we go. Okay, so we handle police and fire for the different agencies, which are Oaklawn, Bridgeview, Burbank, Evergreen Park, and then we also do fire dispatch for Bedford Park Fire and Central Stickney Fire. Next to that, you'll see our different levels of population. Oaklawn Fire Department and Bedford Fire Department, we're looking at some of the ISO ratings. They're a Class 2, and Oaklawn also meets the NFPA 1221 for emergency call answering services rated for the ISO. So in order for these organizations to receive those different levels of ISO classifications, a lot of that has to do with what we provide from the Oaklawn Dispatch Center. That portion of that NFPA is specific to the emergency call volume and how we handle things, and that's what our department does for the ISO. We recently consolidated the Hotchkiss Police Department just this past May, on May 2nd, 2017, so they are also a member. The member municipalities that we have together cover about 27 square miles and 127,000 residents. This just shows you a map of our boundaries. So if you look where Oaklawn is, and then Alsip is just beneath that, and then Evergreen. So we're all pretty connected, and we utilize, I know that Alsip Police Department works often with our Oaklawn Police Department. So we have 2 PSAPs, which are public standard or public safety answering points. The main one is located in the Village of Oaklawn. I'll show you a couple of pictures in a moment here. The main one that we have is, we have 9 positions there. They're duplicate positions, so any of our dispatchers can sit at any different council. I staff the center with no less than 5 telecommunicators and a shift supervisor. So you have at least 6 people in the room at all times. And then our operations managers, we have one of them on shift as well. So there's typically 6 people and an operations manager on duty. Our remote PSAP is located at the Oak Lawn Fire Department in Station 3. It's in our emergency center downstairs, and that also has 6 working positions. So should anything happen to our main center, we can relocate to the backup center in an emergency. This is just a photo of the main center here. This is our supervisory council. So it's one of our supervisors in the room. Are we skipping it? We're missing a photo. Okay, there we go. So this is the main center. This is where you'll see the dispatchers. It's kind of elongated with the photo. And then the second picture that you saw is a kind of an alcove that comes off, and the shift supervisor sits there. So they're also in the room. This is our backup center, and it's in the basement of the fire department, and that has the 6 positions. It's just another view of it. And then this is our organizational chart. I'm the director on the top of it, and then reporting to me is Rich, who's our technology team leader. I have 3 of the operations team leaders. Craig is with me tonight. They each have a primary duty or project. One of them oversees as our leads agency coordinator, another does training, and then Craig here with me tonight is our quality assurance. Quality assurance is really important to centers. We're lucky that we're able to have an individual that focuses primarily on that. We want to be proactive and not reactive. We also have, and I'll go into the next slide with this, but we do have 4 positions. Our dispatchers they're contracted through Norcom. I have 4 dispatchers in the room that are shift line supervisors. So the shift team leader that you saw there is an employee of Norcom. And then we also have 23 dispatchers that are Norcom. The organizational chart, can you flip back to it a second? Sorry. That's okay. That follows our chain of command. So we have our dispatchers, and then we have operators in charge, and then our shift team leaders. They are all Norcom employees, and then they all report to myself or to an operations team leader through Oak Lawn. So just to break it down, I'll give you an overview of Norcom. Norcom, if you don't know who they are, they're a 911 facility that was established in 1994. They're part of Superior Ambulance, and Superior Ambulance is a hub, and their hub is out of Elmhurst. Superior has Norcom dispatch services that they offer. Norcom itself has 3 other centers. They have one in Leiden, they have one in Cicero. Leiden is Franklin Park. They have one in Cicero, and then most recently they consolidated Chicago Heights. They are members of the Illinois TERT team as well, which is the Telecommunicators Response Task Force. The agencies that they do have, or the departments that they have in the other centers, they are all Norcom management, Norcom directors, they're Norcom facilities. What makes Oak Lawn unique is the Oak Lawn, myself, my team leaders are Oak Lawn, or employees of Oak Lawn, and actually Oak Lawn Regional Communications, and I'll go into that a little bit more. We're housed in the village of Oak Lawn, but we do have our own joint ETSB, which was just established, and our budget and everything is separated, and we'll talk about that more in finances. So part of my contract for our budget is that we budget the Norcom employees. They are responsible for hiring the employees, but we do get involved as soon as they do all their testing. So they undergo regular testing, the applicant applies, they go through a testing process. If they're successful in the testing and their background, we get involved in the Oak Lawn level. I have my Oak Lawn Regional Communications, the team leaders step in and we do the interviews with those individuals. We select who we feel is a good fit for the agency, and we bring them on board. Oak Lawn does all of the on-the-job training, and Norcom provides them with a lot of certifications and classroom training that they get before they're going in for their on-the-job training. So the TCs obtain multiple certifications, and they're mostly through APCO. They get their telecommunicator training, which is typically a 5-day process. They do a fire service communications training, and that's about 4 days long. They get certified in CPR and APCO EMD, and that takes about 4 days. They get a LEED certification. They get certified in NIMS, which is through police. They have the 100, 200, 700, and 800 level. They get the basic call-taking overview, and that's all done through NORCOM in a classroom environment. NORCOM then also pays for anything that's related to the continuing educational costs for those different certifications, any specialized training classes that we feel they need to attend or want to attend, and any conferences they attend. Every conference that we have at a state level, NORCOM employees are there. So for the fire MABUS conferences, they're there. We also have a state 911 telecommunicator conference that we do in the fall, and they have a lot that attend that as well. Once they're done with that classroom training, we bring them into the Oaklawn Regional Communications Center, and that's where we start our hands-on training. We do our CAD training with them, and that CAD training also follows our national APCO standards. We do their training on the job, which is typically for a call taker 6 to 8 weeks, and then we get them trained in either police or fire, and that typically will take another 8 to 10 weeks. So when they're there, they train for quite a while before we release them. We have employees in the center now who are specific to fire. They can do call taking, which is handling your non-emergency and emergency calls and dispatching fire, or we have them do the same and then police dispatching. My operators in charge and my shift team leaders can do every position. We have them, they're kind of classified. So we have a TC1 who could do one or the other. Our TC2s are capable of working police, fire, and doing the 911 calls, and then the shift team leaders as well. So they also get a difference in pay as they increase their abilities. I'm going to let Rich go ahead and talk about technology for a little bit here.
Sorry, my fault. Okay. All right. I'll try to make this brief because I could talk about technology all day, and it's starting to get late. So at Oaklawn, we have a CAD system that also is integrated with a records management system for the police department, and we also have a mobile system, and it's all one suite of products that we offer for our agencies. We also have the Positron West phone or 911 system, which we recently upgraded. We're currently, we have the Motorola Gold Leak console, which is fairly out of date, but we're slated this year to upgrade that. We have purchased the equipment. We just have to get that ready and deployed in the center. We also have a Eventide recorder with quality factor software. So the recorder is the piece of equipment that is recording all the radio traffic, all the 911 calls, and it integrates into a quality assurance application that Craig is able to use and pull that information back to be able to review the review calls, review dispatches, and be able to send that digitally back to our staff members. We also use NetMotion Mobile VPN, so all our squads and fire apparatus, they all use the internet to connect back to our center. So the NetMotion product makes a secure connection that's back to us and keeps that connection active, so there's two-way communication back and forth between a 911 center and the vehicles in the field. All our police departments are connected via fiber, so we utilize a leased product through AT&T because we need more speed from fiber, so we're able to get that from them and able to take that cost and spread it out over time. We also use an Everbridge emergency notification system, which is a system that is used to notify residents in the case of either emergencies or not emergencies. Residents can sign up and use their own personal cell phones, text messages, email addresses. They can build their profile. That's part of our system, too, that we use with our partner agencies. And this year, too, we're working on the APCO Advisor EMD software. So currently, when we do emergency medical dispatch, it's a flip card system. So they're going through and actually looking at the cards. We're going to integrate that into a digital system that's part of CAD that will, based on information that they're entering, will gear those questions and be able to make that a much more efficient process to help callers in a time of need. And I'll blow through these real quick. So in 2010, we implemented our CAD system, so we've been using that system for quite some time. The system serves over 250 officers. We have about 160 mobile devices deployed, and it processes over 2.5 million messages annually. So messages can be anything that's sent from car to CAD, leads messages, CAD dispatches. That's all integrated, which is representative of the system being a true multi-dispatch system that could be accommodated or be accommodating to growth, and that's how we build we worked on building the system in that manner. We also have a redundant data center in our backup center, so back in the backup we have another set of servers over there in case we were to lose the primary center. We do have equipment that's back there. We also have monthly tech meetings with our department admins on the police side, and then we try to have quarterly meetings with the fire side too, so to talk about any issues they may have, anything they want to see done. We work on new projects together, keep them in the loop on current things that are going on or things that we're planning on doing. Also part of that system is data sharing. So on the police side, the information that's entered by the 4 main police departments into the system is shared between them. So the context of Burbank, the Oak Lawn officers can see, and vice versa. Evergreen can see Burbank. So you could be an officer who's out on a traffic stop at 2 in the morning and run one inquiry through leads. You'll get back a bunch of information from the other agencies that can give them a much more detailed on a traffic stop, since they could be out there, essentially by themselves for a short period of time. They get a lot of information that they're able to consume right back in their mobile terminal. And the big part about this is the annual maintenance of these systems are part of the costs. So that's part of our budget. So that budget then gets shared out, which we'll explain later on how the billing cycle works. But the cost of running all those systems is part of the billing with our partner agencies. Everbridge, again, we've been running the system for quite some time. I explained it a little bit. Emergency, non-emergency messages, the residents, you can sign up online. Messages can be geographically targeted. So if you only need to notify certain individuals about an emergency, you can do that. If you need to notify the whole town about a non-emergency, you can easily do that too. So it's customizable based on the situation. And like I said before, people can sign up for text, email, their cell phones. And they can also opt in for automatic weather notifications if they would like to get them too. Since we have multiple departments, multiple pieces of equipment, we deploy a network monitoring tool that's able to make us proactive in problem resolution. So I'm able to see and get notifications if certain things go down. So if something goes down at the Burbank police side, we get a notification because they might not be able to use a piece of equipment. We can know on our side where that equipment failure might be and whose level of responsibility that is. So we try to deploy solutions that give us the ability to either respond efficiently to issues, because with technology you're always going to have issues, and to be proactive at that. We can also see things that may be potentially failing in the future.
Okay, in this segment, I'd like to talk about the Joint 911 Authority. This is part of, we gave some documents ahead of time. If you refer to the joint, the IGA, it should be on page 2, number 6. All I want to do here is point out that we have established a joint consolidation and a joint 911 authority. The state did approve our Oak Lawn Regional Communications Center consolidation. So the joint 911 authority actually consists now of public safety members from the city of Burbank, the village of Bridgeview, Evergreen Park, village of Hodgkins, along with myself as the director. And anyone else who comes on as a Tier 1 municipality will also be entitled to have one member of the Joint 911 Authority, and designation of that new participating municipality will be specified by the participants enabling their ordinance. So, and then what that board does is we have the bylaws that are written up, and I think you were all given a copy of those, and you can look them over. And they're subject, and they can be changed by the governing law. Part of that, if you look on number 6 under, if you have time to look in that joint board, is A lot of this has to do with receiving surcharge from the state. Receiving monies in surcharge are typically, you can use them in different ways. Our center, you get a vote on the surcharge monies that come from the state. So when we receive monies, it actually is labeled currently, it's individual checks that we get for the agencies, and they're eventually going to be specified, is my understanding, by zip code. That board, whoever you choose to designate as your Joint 911 Authority member, has say over that surcharge. So what we typically will do is vote on the surcharge to offset the costs of operations for your specific agency. And that comes off the top. So regardless of whether the surcharge is currently at is at the 87 cents, if they increase it, which they're attempting to do, to $1.50, that would be an offset of your overall costs. We do get a lot of information. The Oak Lawn Village Manager, Larry Deachin, is a member of the State 911 Authority Board. So he has a lot of representation. He represents the municipalities with a population of less than 500,000 in a county with a population in excess of 2 million. So part of the bill that was recently passed is the 911 surcharge that was supposed to increase our funding to $1.50, and I think Chicago's went to $5. It could potentially double everyone's surcharge that's in our agencies to offset those costs. As it stands today, the governor's office is not signing the bill due to some of the changes and increases, but the village manager, Mr. Deachin, he is an advocate of that Senate bill. It did get passed through the House and the Senate, and it passed with the supermajority back in May 31st this year. So they're going to continue to try and have that passed, and the goal would be that, eventually we'll see some sort of increase in surcharge, and then you as a municipality and your agencies can use that money to offset the fees that would involve joining Oak Lawn Regional Communications. The second part of that is, so we have the two boards. It's the Joint 911 Authority, and we also have an operational board. This also, I think it's in your interdepartmental agreement with the subscribers in Section 6, it talks about the budget process. So the operations group consists of the chiefs of each department that have services through us, and the operations group meets quarterly to discuss the implementation of effective operational strategies, and quarterly meetings are held in succession after the Joint 911 board. So when our Joint 911 board meets, we meet right after that. Now, the operational board also has a vote. We'll go through the different tiers, but you have a vote on the annual budget. So each agency will see our budget ahead of time. We have to present that budget, which accounts for all operations, maintenance, and repair costs. And we do this to make sure that it's approved by a majority, and we have to have that ready prior to November 15th of the year, following our term of the agreement. So we have two different votes that come in from your joint board and then operational boards as well. Okay. So this is where we're going to go into what we feel is the fairest way to run a joint consolidated center and fiscally responsible. We have tier levels set up. So there are 3 tier user groups. The Tier 1 user group is a government entity that we dispatch for, but we handle all police services, and we take all the 911 calls into our center. A Tier 2 user group would be a primary, we'd be their primary center, but we'd only dispatch either their police or their fire. An example of what we have today is Central Stickney Fire and Bedford Park Fire Department. We dispatch their fire department, but we do not take their 911 calls. So their calls get transferred in, and we give them the dispatch services. The Tier 1 user group, a minimum fee, which would be an example now is Hodgkins, is $100,000 a year for a Tier 1 fee. And this is a formula that we'll go into that is used to compute more of a proportionate share. So the formula that we go by for our Tier 1 proportionate share is we look at a cost savings model, which is population, your EVA, total cost for service, and total emergency calls. This is what it looks like, and then we look for an average of the combined models. So your first model is the one I just discussed, your calls for service, population, and EVA. The second one is your calls for service, emergency call volume, and EVA. The third one is your calls for service, population, and emergency call volume. And then model 4 is emergency call volume. And then that's computed to determine the average of the combined models.
And for like an agency that's like Hodgkins, since they're a small population, small call volume, their allocation formula would come under $100,000 when all those figures were put in there. Well, when we reviewed this formula, we felt that that was unfair for an agency to pay far less than what everybody else is paying and be able to benefit on there. So we have a figure that is the minimum. So if it comes out to be less than that, that's where it bottoms out. So any agencies that exceed from that when all those formula numbers are worked out, this way they can pay more, because if you're doing these services and providing all this stuff for, let's say, $60,000, it's just not fair to the other agencies that have a contribution that may be 4 or 5 or 6 times greater than that. So that's where that minimum fee that she was referring to in the previous slide for the city of Hodgkins, how that falls in there for them.
So this is where our data comes from. The populations obtained from the U.S. Census website based on the figures from the last completed census. The agency EVA is obtained from the taxing agency that reports to the Cook County Clerk's website for the most recent tax year. And then your emergency call volume is the total 911 calls grouped by automatic location identifier, which is your alley, city or community name, and all 7-digit and other calls that are allocated to Oaklawn only.
So we have a whole group of calls that we don't know which city they belong to. Those just come under Oaklawn's numbers. So this way they at least get attached to somebody. So this way it kind of boosts Oaklawn's numbers where they're going to pay a little bit more. But when they're figuring out this formula or looking at these numbers, Oaklawn agreed and said that makes the most amount of sense since the agency is hosted by us, that we can't determine who those calls actually were for. And just because it says that's where the city is, we don't know who that's for, but somebody still has to answer those calls. So they would have to be going to a 911 center somewhere. Someone has to process them.
Okay.
And back to the calls for service model. So since we have technology that's deployed that allows the officers to interact with the dispatchers in a way, we found a way to reduce the calls for service totals. Because there's a lot of patrol functions that may be out there that officers are doing. If they use their mobile terminals to initiate activities between the dispatchers, those don't get part of your totals that's billed for. So we call those non-billable calls for service. So when we looked at the totals, there was a large percentage of these calls, again, that officers are using their technology for, and the few that we've narrowed it down to what we call our bar checks, condition reports, house watches, premise checks, and special attentions. Like I said, a lot of these may be patrol functions that are part of their daily responsibilities while they're out on patrol, but they need to be marked down as doing these sets of activities, and the dispatcher is keeping track of it. But as long as they're using their technology to do that, and those numbers aren't tabulated against the agency's totals, and that reduces the total calls for service considerably. And depending on the agency, it could be anywhere from 30 to 40%.
This is what the cost formula looks like if you were to look at a pie chart. Oaklawn is currently at 42%, Evergreen is a little over 20%, Bridgeview contributes 16%, and Burbank at 19%. So the more towns that you add together, everyone's sharing in those proportional costs. And here's an example of, with the consolidations that are happening, the more agencies that we're able to put together, the less cost that it is per agency that's part of that whole pie chart.
And it all breaks down to cost, too. If we look to consolidate with agencies where they're adding staff members or adding some other things, those costs may exceed that, and you might not see a decrease in the percentage for the other members, and that might not be a cost-effective means. But in this particular situation we're talking about, there is a lot of shared resources that we have between the agencies that could give us the ability to not add additional staff members and just utilize the technology that we already have to be able to provide a service to Alsip. So you could see a model like this where you'll start to see the decrease, and by having more users or more people that's part of the system is and it benefits the other members of the agencies too.
This portion talks about our capital costs. So when we discussed earlier how we bring in the surcharge monies and then the agencies have a vote and they vote to offset the costs of operations, part of us not having to hold on to that surcharge money is we've agreed to a capital cost improvement plan, which is a 3-year plan, and each agency contributes annually to that plan. So this offsets our costs when we do need to upgrade equipment, which Rich pointed out. We've upgraded literally everything in that center already, but moving forward, there are a few other projects that we have documented that we would like to do. Oak Lawn contributes $125,000 annually. All Tier 1 users that are contributing more than $125,000 to their operational costs would contribute $60,000. And then, as we discussed earlier, with some of the smaller towns coming in, having that minimum of $100,000 or less, they would contribute $30,000. And if you are not a Tier 1 and you're a Tier 2 user, such as Stickney or Bedford Park Fire, their annual contribution is $10,000. And that, again, is to, we discussed this with the other members of the board, is to keep the costs low, but yet to have something aside where we can make improvements. We also have a maximum capital on that, which is $1.5 million. So if we won't, keep contributing to it, we'll keep it at $1.5 million to top out. We don't believe there's a need to have to keep money set aside unless you have projects that you intend on doing within a time frame. And that's also voted upon with all the agencies. So anything that goes into our capital reserve and the monies that are set aside are allocated for that for the future, that's also voted upon and what those projects will be.
You don't have the ability or the need to ever move the funds around in any operational. It's once it's in the capital expense, it stays in capital expense?
Correct. It's two separate funds. So we have them, we're contributing that money just for that, and then the capital or the maintenance and the operational is offset by the monies coming in from the different agencies.
And with the Village of Oak Lawn, their capital costs are considered what they call is anything that's over $20,000. So if we have any costs that exceed $20,000, and which when we call it, if it's a one-time project, that if in 2017 we're spending $25,000 to implement whatever piece of equipment, we would consider that a capital expense because we're not going to be paying that $25,000 the following year. So that's how we try to build those projects. And then if there was a maintenance portion of that, that would then fall into the annual cost of the operations and maintenance of the actual center itself. There's no, at the end of the year, there's no excess. And if there is an excess, our finance department figures that out and gives a reimbursement back to the agencies. Okay, so good. we don't sit on an excess for the regular operations, but we will sit on an excess in capital because those products are
rainy
slated.
Day fund.
Yep. Yeah, but we cap it because this way, I mean, it's technology. We're always going to find something. There's something that's going to need to be replaced. There's only so many years. But let's say we did have several other agencies that were part of it, and we're nearing that cap. Well, then there's going to be relief to the other partner agencies too that they're going to benefit from that, is because we're going to be near that capped amount that's set by the contract.
Thank you.
And to talk about what some of that money is used for, so in 2016 we upgraded our phone system that was probably about 7 years old, computer-based phone system, just like everything, has a shelf life. That stuff's been running every day for several years, had to upgrade it. So we've recently implemented that, just finished that project in January, and that cost us about $250,000. This year we're working on upgrading our actual console equipment, so the equipment that the dispatchers use to communicate to the police and fire departments, and that we're looking at about a $1.3 million project. And that looks like quite a bit, as we're trying to build some more levels of redundancy in our backup center too, so we can have more equipment and have more resources out there in case we have a whole system failure. So we are working on that project now, and that also is going to prepare us for the digital radio adoption that's going to be happening here in the next 4 to 5 years on the police departments, who have to get off their old equipment and move to either a county or a state system or develop their own radio system, which can be very, very, very costly. Also in 2017, we're working on issuing an RFP to purchase a fire station alerting system for our fire departments, which will integrate into our CAD system and give them some pre-alert information, some displays in their firehouses, and ramp-up tones, a couple things that they've been asking for quite some time. So we're working on that RFP now to hopefully get that issued in the next few months here. And we estimate that cost to be around $250,000. And again, all these projects are outlined, and we review them every year, and the agencies get to vote on those. So we're not, taking on additional costs that are unaffordable. And another upcoming one in 2018-2019, which is our main servers are going to need to be replaced, and we're also looking at console replacement. But when we're looking at that too, we're looking at growth because of what's going on here. So we've been working and looking at that and see how those costs on there. So here's a little layout of one of the console providers. We currently have 9. With the new design that they have, we can make better usage of the space that we have, since everything we have is lakefront property and we can't come up with any more property on the second floor where we're at. We're able to fit 2 more because it uses the space a little bit better. So conceptually, this is just an idea that we have out there, but we did look at that, and then they give us a little 3D rendering to be able to see that. So, and it's funny because you'll see this, and these consoles are almost the same size. They just positioned them in a different manner, and they're a little bit shorter, but you can fit more into one room. So we're trying to optimize the space that we have too.
So we can discuss some of Alsip's costs. With Alsip coming on, you would fall under our Tier 1 agency, with fees ranging from about $455,000 to about $470,000, plus you'd be contributing $60,000 into that capital contribution annually. So that would bring your cost for police and 911 services to about $515,000 to about $530,000. And as we stated before, all the Tier 1 agencies are represented by the 911 authority. So you do have an option to make decisions over the 911 surcharges that would be funneled into Oaklawn Regional Communications. Ideally, we would want to bring both your police and fire department. So having both come on board and adding the fire department would put your costs at approximately $475,000 to $490,000 plus your $60,000 in annual contributions. So the annual cost range would be somewhere around $535,000 to $550,000 annually.
Yeah, and like Diana was saying before, the surcharge money can be applied to reduce those costs. So the 911 authority will meet and they'll decide how those costs are used. And since those are allocated to the individual municipalities, that money is the municipality's money. It could be used to offset your cost. They just don't go into a pool for the center to be able to use how they want. It goes to offset your cost to be able to potentially reduce your costs, so then funds can be used, in other areas than from the individual municipalities.
A couple of things. There's one part that I realized when we get to this conclusion that I wanted to address. When I was discussing the NORCOM employees and how they're contracted out, the nice thing about having NORCOM is they do offset. It's a standard. It's a fee that we pay them annually for the amount of employees, and they take care of all their benefits, their medical, any liabilities, and they do, as we stated, all the training. So it's all encompassed. One of the things that we do also have is the opportunity to hire from agencies that we do bring on. So agencies do have, anyone that we take will have a preference to become a NORCOM employee. We currently have an Alsip dispatcher that works with us part-time, and it's my understanding that we have one that's applied that's going through our testing process. They still go through the testing process. It's a standardized test to ensure that they have what the minimum requirements are or skill set to be a dispatcher. I also have been on both sides of these consolidations. So back when I was a dispatcher, I did consolidate, and I went from a dispatcher to a multi-jurisdictional agency. So I understand what dispatchers are going through now with the need to consolidate and being mandated to consolidate. The agency I worked at the time had a choice, and we consolidated. So I've been on both sides of it. I've also worked part-time to help out an agency that their employees just picked up and left due to consolidation, and we had about 6 months before that got done, so I would go and help out part-time. So I understand the employee part of it, and I believe that everyone, they're an asset. So when you take an agency's dispatchers who know what they're doing and they're good at their job and they're used to the agency they work with, my philosophy is you bring them in, we train side by side because we have a lot to learn from each other, and I know my dispatchers have a lot to learn, especially with the one we have now from Alsip, and they're also learning what we do. So that is a benefit to having another outside company to be able to say, this is what we'd like to see, put them on the top of the list, let's get them tested and trained. On-the-job training is important. And if you're able to get through the basic skill set, which most dispatchers should have if they've been dispatching, it's the on-the-job training that you need to get involved in and make sure that they're able to do it all. But that's something that I feel is a big benefit to our agencies.
And just to close this out, the responsible port, or the formula that's used to derive the costs, it's based on the average cost for service, population, emergency call volume, and the EAV of the agencies. Costs are based on the total operating expenses. So the operating costs are the operating costs. Anything that is a one-time cost is considered capital. Those projects are slated differently and would affect the budget differently. We use technology to reduce those billable calls for service in different means, so we give the agencies a way to be able to use their technology, so this way they're not being punished for using a piece of equipment that we deploy out there. It just doesn't seem to make sense to us. Again, we have a separate capital cost. Tier 1 users are part of the Joint 911 Authority, and technology is a big part of the operation. We have a system that we've deployed 7 years ago. You can talk to our agencies. We do have issues. We work through those problems. It's working. I'm the only one who's maintaining it, and I'm able to take vacations and go out of the country, and it's still, it's still working. Yeah, sometimes I have to remote in when I'm on the airplane over the Gulf, but it's all right. It's not. It's still, like I said, I could still sleep at night. So it's a system that we've built with growth in mind to be able to accommodate agencies in the future. So we built a foundation with the future in mind. Data sharing is important, especially with the police agencies and being in close vicinity. And again, with a strong technology foundation, we're ready what the future brings with next generation. If it's automated alarms, if it's vehicle telematics, we're getting information from automated crash response stuff. If it's the future of remote jail monitoring, camera integrations, all those things, we're trying to be prepared for them and be ready for the future in technology.
One last thing. To your question earlier, we true up the operating. So to Rich's point, the costs are based on total operating expenses. So we true up every year the actual spending to the budget, and then every agency gets a check.
Okay, good.
Okay?
I had a couple of things that I just wanted to point out that you guys said, and then I'm just going to end it with a question. Looking at your pie chart, it looked like you had 2 communities that were, okay, all right. So it's not, it's not us and somebody else.
We're, with the consolidation process at first, when everyone was mandated, the different areas that had to do so, we had a couple of calls, and then everybody kind of held back. And now we're getting a lot, we're entertaining a lot of different agencies. We've done a lot of tours. We're not out, to be honest, I'm not out looking to say, hey, maybe you need to join us, maybe you need to join us. To me, it's what makes sense. Alsip makes sense. The police agency now is on the same exact, the net frequency that we already monitor. We work closely even with, the fire department, and it makes sense. You guys are local, you're nearby. It doesn't make sense for us to go and try and find agencies, that are further north. We prefer to have it locally, geographically desirable, I guess, and keep everyone close. And that's just, we've had a few different agencies come our way, ones that, may not be happy with where they're at today either. So.
Okay, so provided it's just us, I mean, just our numbers,
Can
looking
I
at
just
the
say
numbers.
something real quick
Sure.
on that? And that sample was just to show that that's, like it's, quickly. It's a 10%,
Okay.
change, but Oak Lawn's percentage only change, doesn't change by 9%.
Got it.
You know what I mean? So it's, Oak Lawn's the only one who's benefiting. Then
Well,
everybody's benefiting.
Going on
based
the numbers that you have on the paper plus our population, you would have an increase of about 16%. Okay, that's just based on the population numbers that I cracked out here. I just pulled the numbers off the internet from the census for the different populations. So 16%, it's a pretty significant increase in capacity. You said, of course, that you'd be, looking to expand, and we have qualified dispatchers here, and you said that you look to communities, of course, that are, lack of a better word, absorbed into your system. Those people have a potential maybe to be hired. Do you weight them differently? I mean, or do they have, is it an open, anyone can apply for this job and everybody has an equal opportunity, or would our dispatchers that are being displaced have a weighted chance?
Priority, do you mean?
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. We're actually, that's part of the process that we're looking forward with is you currently have dispatchers who are realizing that they're going to have to go somewhere. So with us employing them now, with Norcom having them down as part-time, they're there part-time to learn what it is that we do, and also with the, should Alsip come, they'll be there and they'll be able to dispatch Alsip. So that is what I'm looking at. The smaller agencies that we're talking about, there are many of them who a lot of the dispatchers may or may not even want to come, or a lot of them are close, to be honest, nearing retirement. So there are many that would maybe consider wouldn't, but it's based on whatever agency. I mean, we're entertaining Alsip now, and we feel that's a great fit. And with them coming on, if you should decide to come on, you would have that preference. Like we have room available. Even last year when we thought there was a good chance before the state allowed extensions for consolidation, we held off on some hiring too at the time, because we thought, well, if Alsip winds up joining, then I want to make sure we have enough, availability to get some more of their dispatchers in, so they can stay with Alsip, but do it out of Oak Lawn.
That's great news. Thank you.
Does anyone else have any questions?
I was going to ask Mr. Hannigan, I know you're the finance guy over there. You were here this evening. Anything we should be aware of moving forward? I already kind of ran up to the sticker and we saw the price on this, but anything we should be aware of, Brian, like switching, like any cost concerns or anything like that?
Well, I think we always worry about how much capacity we have when we take on another agency like Alsip, but I think Diana kind of laid that out. I think the big thing for you is that this center is really all based on cost proportionate. That formula that Diana, again, she had to go through it quickly. That was done. We hired an outside professional to come up with those formulas, and that's really done so that everyone pays their fair share, which is, based on all those little attributes. So I don't know that I think we've covered as much as we think we need to.
Sure.
You obviously may have some questions that follow up, and I'd certainly be happy to answer those.
And we have we've got a 911 dispatch meeting coming up on, July 12th, right? Okay, so we're going to be getting a little bit more into where we stand with our funding, and obviously we can get a better look at where our fund balance stands and so forth yet, too, but that's really kind of irrelevant. It's just a matter of what we can afford and so forth then, too. And, I was going to ask, too, gentlemen, obviously I appreciate everybody coming out tonight. I know I was here for the presentation last year from Diane, and which is why I said at the beginning of the meeting that with 4 new trustees, everybody had to be a little bit enlightened. One thing that's kind of nice is with Bridgeview, Burbank, and Evergreen Park, we actually share the same law firm, which I haven't heard anything negative. Let's put it that way. I mean, nothing that the Kankar law firm has pushed back to us and so forth. That's great to hear. But can I ask, let's just say hypothetically, I don't want to say hypothetically, but let's say, for instance, like Evergreen Police, accuracy of like dispatching addresses. Any issues? I mean, are they good with that all the time?
Very, very good. They geo-coordinated all
So everything was geo-based prior to them going online. So no, there has been no problems with
Okay.
geography.
And usually that's always, obviously that's what you're reading the papers. We haven't, obviously we're not involved in a program like this, so we wouldn't know. We only know what we read in the paper. So, so the accuracy of addresses, that's always a biggie all the time. Did they go to the right place and so forth then too?
Yeah. No, so everything was, they're all geocoded for every dispatch.
Okay.
Correct. So our CAD system, we do, again, we follow a standard of as far as call taking standards. Our dispatchers will, when you give an address, they have to repeat it back, and they have to repeat it in a separate way. So if you're telling them it's 1230, 1234, whatever, Raymond, they have to tell you it's 1234 Raymond Avenue, and then they give you the town back. So a lot of times residents will think, oh, they don't know where we live because they're giving me an address and they're saying in Evergreen Park. Well, multi-jurisdictional agencies, that's what you have to do. You can't just say the Walmart. How many Walmarts are, in all these different towns? How far does Harlem run? So that's part of that address verification. The other thing is we're human. Nobody's perfect. We do have a process in place that should something arise, and if it is, a questionable, each of our agencies have a sheet that fills out, it's logged, it's issued a complaint number, it's investigated, just like you would in any, other municipality, and we make sure that we investigate it. We have a progressive chain of discipline if necessary, and that's all, everyone has access to that. The different departments, we meet with them all the time, so we have different meetings each month if anything gets brought up then, but we encourage for things to get resolved as soon as possible. So if anything's questionable, they can call, talk to a shift supervisor. If it can't get handled at that level, we have our operations managers that are there, or myself. Usually the chiefs, any chief of any department has my cell phone number, they have my office line, and I'm available all the time. As Rich pointed out, he might have been on a plane at one point, but I think I was in the Czech Republic answering calls, so.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to say, too, that
Sure.
some of the stuff that the board may have read was during the election process, which I'm sure everybody's aware of.
Yeah.
So some of those items were kind of really stretched farther than they should have been
I get it.
stretched.
Sure.
So I'd just like that to be on the record as well, so.
You mean there's fake news?
Yes.
Can't-Care Law Firm, you have the chiefs from Burbank, Bridgeview, and Evergreen here. This process where we're at now has taken a while for us to evolve to this. Believe me, it was not as decent a process as it's been the last, say, year or 2 years. And that has nothing to do with anything more than the contracts were far different. So the contracts which I think Diana sent you, which were done with the Can't-Care Law Firm, is intended to make sure that all the agencies have an equal say in how the center is run. It's not just to be run by Oak Lawn or by one agency. So
Good to know, Brian. I didn't know that. Good to know that too. Again, gentlemen, I appreciate everybody's time. I'm sorry our meeting ran so long tonight. Can I ask, let's say Oak Lawn PD, any issues with I'm sorry.
No,
any issues with software or anything like that? We just updated all of our radios recently and all of our police cars. I know that we spent about $250,000 just recently, but
Everyone has to still spend that by us, and
Yeah,
we talk about
okay.
it. We talk about it
So we
continually.
get a credit?
Yeah, you guys get a credit. You're ahead of the curve between everybody else, because that's what I was saying before, that part of our upgrade path is the preparation for that digital radio infrastructure, because that
Okay.
radio system is going away. It's going away to make room for the nationwide broadband system that's already been in place. They're already starting to build it. They're already starting to work with vendors for the state. I mean, these things are in process. So some people think that they're not going to be forced to do it, but more than likely it's going to happen. And by being ahead of the curve and being ready for that, you're already prepared.
So the stuff we bought, the equipment we bought, Chief, is compliant?
Yeah.
Wow.
And
And what
when
Rich
they
is
bought it, our
talking,
phone started ringing and said, "What are they doing over there?" I'm
Yeah.
like, "Can they give us some money too?" Because
but that's what Rich is talking about. So when they do have your digital radios, the project that we're currently working on, and we have the equipment's already there, it's in our equipment room, is the change to our radio dispatch system for the council itself. So it'll be able to take both digital and analog. And the phone upgrade that we just did this past year is also ready for next generation. It's text ready, which we're hoping to roll text to 911 probably by the end of next year. It's already ready to go. The biggest part of that is public education, because you definitely don't want to roll that out without educating the public on when they should really use text to 911 instead of calling.
And the state's also working with a contractor that they have that they're looking at that. So it may be a state program. So instead of signing a contract for multiple years with a vendor, we're waiting to see what happens with the state, because the state may be funding that part of that. But if this bill doesn't get signed, the state isn't going to be funding anything, and we'll be scrambling for dollars soon too. So we're just trying to wait and see that out and see how that pans out too.
Well, that's what I was just going to ask, and just for the benefit of some of the trustees then too, the number that we were given, let's just say between $535 and $600,000, is that not including state funding, or including state funding?
So your state funding can go to offset that. So you can reduce your charges. Your costs are your cost. So if you have a variable amount, and I think when we were looking at the one AR 911 report from last year, I think you guys had like 180,000.
It's about 197.
So
yeah.
you can reduce that by 197. If it went to $1.50, you're talking about 400,000, because that's almost double the amount, because you're going from what 73 cents to
It was like
$1.50 or whatever. I mean, I'm not the math guy, but it's a considerable amount of money that you can potentially be offsetting. And if we come under cost at the end of the year, like Brian had just said, that we have a true up at the end of the year. So there is no profitability at the end, that they're going to figure out, well, how much were your actual costs and what was it adjusted? And agencies have seen money come back to them after we started with this formula. And we've looked at these, the numbers over time. They're very trendable. They're very predictable. It's not like you see things that are way outside one year and then something, bottoms out, because someone would have to take those costs. We have seen a fluctuation in change, but then you can tell that's based on certain policies and procedures that are at certain agencies, and they've increased certain activities. Like we've seen activity one time at Burbank shoot through the roof is because they had their gang guys that are out there and doing a lot of additional activities. Well, of course, the calls went up because there's a lot more activity that was out there, too. So you can kind of see where those numbers go, and we can trend them out, and we've looked at that over time. So it's not, at least with the four agencies that we're looking at here, you don't see numbers continually skyrocket or bottom out.
And as far as the dispatch side of it goes, because we are contracted with Norcom, it's a set fee, so you're not looking at overtime expenses, which are always, they're up and down depending on year, depending on your people. That's a set cost. So whatever they may or may not accrue in overtime doesn't affect our budget. So it's a lot easier to forecast, and look out for the future with that.
Our initial 911 was 50 cents, so we already saw the increase from the state change up on that, so it's reflected. Is there any initial costs for the conversion?
So for new agencies, you would have your initial licensing cost. So we would sit down and figure out, at least on the police side and on the fire side for mobiles, what devices they need, how many they need, and then work with SunGuard, which has changed to Superion, and get you a quote for that. But we're always sticklers that we're not paying the first quote. They're going to give us money off because we're trying to get new business in to help us reduce our cost. There needs to be a partnership with the agency that we have too. They have to help us, because if we're giving someone an astronomical cost and it's unaffordable for them to come to us, well then we're potentially losing out on it too. So we want to make sure that that's economical. So depending on yes, there could be an initial cost in there, but then the annual maintenance for those devices is built into our costs.
And the fiber is built in there as well?
Yes, because since we use AT&T for the leased fiber, essentially we order up another fiber line, which unfortunately is the slowest process ever through AT&T, but everything is pretty much with AT&T. But once it gets up and running, it's pretty functional. We've been running on that for several years. It's pretty reliable. Those costs are then built into our annual operation cost.
Better not be slow. First, it's got to get off the ground.
No problem. Any more questions, trustees? Oh, I apologize. You're right. We brought that up quite a bit. We actually have a Keltron fire alarm system piped directly into our dispatch right now. Are you set up for that?
So currently with our 4 agencies, we have ADT contracted for that, which is fine because that was what was dedicated. And the last visit, we had looked at that, and just the initial looks at it, it looks like that is just a network-connected device that could be relocated by us and sit in addition with our alarm board, and they would have to be using essentially 2 alarm boards, but we can integrate that into our operations pretty straightforward. I mean, unless there's something hidden about it or anything, but that's just the data connection that's coming back to us. So I would think that we can integrate that in and be able to acknowledge and respond to those alarms that are received by that board. But majority of that Keltron stuff too is depending on where your fire is. You want to make sure that that follows the fire department because those are all pretty much fire alarms, right? That you guys have in there? Yeah, so you don't want the fire alarms to be coming to us if your fire dispatch was, somewhere else. So, yeah, so.
Now, is the cost for you guys to monitor that, is that going to cost us additionally?
Not for from a dispatcher's, but we already monitor the same for all the other agencies, so they would just be looking at, and because we have the amount of people that we do in that room, we have it set up at multiple councils. And, kind of what Rich pointed out in the future is if there's going to be a lot more interoperability and data, being able to see things, there might be other software that we could bring on and monitor. And if that would be the case, then in the future we could probably just staff. We've had agencies that staff, if you've got alarms coming in, they just staff like an alarm board operator or somebody who, monitors cells or does that. I mean, that's something that may come up in the future. But currently there wouldn't be a different cost just to monitor another screen.
There is a cost. It's the cost of the call because the alarm goes off. We have to dispatch someone, so it's going to be considered a call. Yeah. No, I'm trying. It's 10:45. I'm trying to get someone to smile around.
Don't start, man. Don't start. Yeah.
We did looked at that too, and I think we've got a couple options we could do. One of them would be because we are able to staff. I don't have to have everyone that knows police and fire and know how to dispatch all. We could designate another council to do fire, and then to have Alsip. And what we would wind up doing is that person would have to be a fire and a call taker. And if we have a MABUS that goes out, then we currently have a fire backup too. So that person could take local traffic for Alsip because it would probably be less to handle if a major incident's happening, and the other one would back the other one up. So it would still be just the utilization of the same employees because currently with Alsip Police being on Net 6, that staffing coming in would be able to offset another fire council too.
About learning what type of call that we dispatch to. Is it totally custom?
Pre-plan.
Yeah, so
The recommendations, and we do, currently what our fire departments do is we have recommendations in our CAD. So they dictate to us what equipment goes to what, who you want to go. Depending on how extreme. And we typically, when we dispatch out, and you probably, be able to hear it, we assign units to our calls. So we don't just voice, this is the address, who's going type of thing. And that comes from the recommendation of the fire department. And it's the same thing for the police department. If you have certain units that go to calls in specific areas based on geography, then we dispatch that accordingly. We just don't wait for someone to key up and say, I'm going, I'm going, I'm going. We do the whole thing.
And since the CAD system is GIS based with the response plans are also based on the location and based on the call type. So the fire department specifies that if this is whatever nature code that we want an engine and the ambulance going on this call, and it's in this particular area, they will see that in the response plan. And if that first ambulance is unavailable, it will recommend another one. I think we go 4, where do we go? We build them 4 deep. I think that they'll go and bypass 4 deep, so it gets pretty, yeah.
That was going to be my last question. For the fire chief, for the fire departments in-house here, do you folks use that? Do you do the same thing? Do you got I apologize. Tom, what's the name of it? Caltron. Do you use those in your towns as well?
We use our Caltron system goes to Oakland Central.
Right.
It's a radio-based alarm system. We did that to reduce false alarms.
Okay.
But they have a private system that they install where ADT does ours. Theirs is a private system, and their revenue comes into the municipality.
Right. What their arrangement is each person that has a fire alarm pays just for the radio. It's a lease, and then there's a small fee that's paid to maintain the board at Oak Lawn Central. So we don't see a profit from that, but basically it's a system that is monitored by our dispatch, and it's immediate. It's a direct connect type system, but we don't do it as an enterprise. We do it basically just as a service.
Sure. We found, too, that between the revenue and the expense has been kind of a wash for this anyway. Right.
Yeah, the volume has to be significant to realize money.
And we're slightly married to it. This program has been in effect for how long, Tom? Yeah. Almost 10 years, and we've had issues with collections and everything else yet, too. So, I mean, I know in the back of my head, it's like, man, is this worth it all the time then, too? Only because it's a wash system, but obviously it's a great system to protect, property with. Yeah.
For some business owners that could add more catastrophic event if it wasn't in place.
Sure. Does Evergreen and Burbank do that, too?
Yeah, that's for every department that opts in.
Gotcha.
For alarm monitoring. It's one central board. Tyco or ADT takes care of the maintenance. They lease the radio. It's somewhere around $100 a month, but they don't have to have a phone line then.
Okay.
And that's where that's the result of the savings.
All right.
Does the SunGuard system have the ability for proximity dispatch?
Yes. And we don't have that feature enabled, but there's been talk about looking at different things. But that is a definite feature that's part of the system that's there now. It's just not something that we're currently utilizing with our agencies.
Anything else, trustees?
For anybody that had comments, could you leave your business cards or sign in for me, please?
Sure. Yeah,
Thank you.
Definitely.
Folks, really appreciate your patience. I'm sorry this ran so late this evening, too. So
We appreciate
Stay in
having the
touch.
opportunity to come back and meeting everyone. So thank you for your
Exactly.
time as well.
Thanks, Diane.
Thank you.
Can I get a motion to adjourn?
Trustee Morris fell ill and left at 9:58.
Okay.
Okay, and Trustee McGreal left at 10:32. I'm sorry, Mayor.
No problem.
Okay, now I'll make a motion to adjourn.
All right.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Great. Thank you.
Big tax coming Saturday.
Yeah, but the
The sugar tax.